And I think those are the most common, and it's across the board. Now, when you check it in your blood, that's also only telling you what you've been exposed to just recently. So maybe the past few weeks. To do like a more advanced test, you will test it in your urine. You'll usually give like a trial, like a small dose chelator, have somebody collect their urine, and this agitates your organs, and then we can actually get a readout of what's been sitting in your organs. So it's more of a long-term overview.
Okay, so now when you say this about the heavy metals, so I grew up in the 70s, you know, and my grandmother had these water cups that are like this awesome aluminum. They're like, the water stays really cold in them. I forget the name of them, but everybody had them back in the 60s and 70s, and we still have them. And I look at them and they're like, there's like aluminum leaching out of them. Like, just, you can tell they're just like oxidized, and it's like, I am not drinking out of these anymore. I have them in the cupboard, but I'm not drinking out of them. Is that where we get this stuff from, like this old aluminum and all these things like that? Or like you said, mostly it's like when you're rubbing it under your armpits and stuff.
Yeah, that's like aluminum, foil, cans, things like that.
So like cooking your stuff on foil in the ovens and all that.
I tell people to try to stay away from foil. And then when we look at like mercury, a lot of people have mercury fillings. Tuna, swordfish, those are like notorious for just being loaded with mercury.
My
unfortunately, favorite. I know.
And now the tuna is even worse because of the some of the radiation that's floating around over there from Fukushima. Some of the fish are kind of floating around in that stuff, and that stuff's moving around out in the ocean a little. So
and one other thing of note with mercury is I always tell people, a lot of people take fish oil. There's some wonderful studies on how wonderful omega-3s are. I know you already said how bad omega-6s are. Yeah, they're horrible. Yeah. Omega-3s. So a lot of companies use tuna. They use like some kind of fish. And that I actually read a study a couple years ago where they compared some of the different big brands of supplements and their omegas, and they found them to have mercury in them. So people need to be very aware of, not only any type of supplement that you're taking, but like especially with omegas that that whatever brand is testing them for heavy metals.
And see, and there's the other problem. Like, so if you're a family and you're trying to, put a dime where a dollar's supposed to go, but you do want to make them healthy. And so what do? You go buy the cheap vitamins and you get this kind of stuff. And it's like, that's the one thing that I've done is I've searched for bioavailability, quality of brands of different, supplements and whatnot, because I know that if you're going to do it, you got to do it right, or else you might be actually creating more problems than you're helping.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I have become very passionate about kind of the supplement world just because of all the research that I've done and all the misleading information that, it hurts me to hear things like that. And you see it all the time where people think, I'm being healthy, I'm getting this. And it's like it's actually a disservice to them. And I think, that's what's driven me to kind of get into more of the production side, working directly with labs to produce supplements and like I said, my detox, so that I can kind of oversee like, where are these ingredients? Where are they coming from? What are we testing them for? How pure are they? And, instead of fighting the system, I'm just going to build a new system. There's my big entrepreneurial dreams.
So we're gonna be touching base back with you on some of this stuff, because we talked about inflammation, and there's a product out there that is cutting edge that's called C60, and some of the people in the chat room have been asking about it. I'm going to ask that you go and do your due diligence on it and come back to us and report on the C60 for us, because I know it's cutting edge. Now I'm taking it because I've read a little about it, and I think that I'm always down for a good anti-inflammatory. So I found a good company that sells a good brand. One of our community members was kind of showing it to us. So I've been on it. I love it. I think it's good. But I'd like to hear your opinion on it. A doctor's opinion who's into supplements and whatnot. Get a good look at it. So if you can look at C60 for us, we would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So inflammation. Now, if somebody wanted to say go to somebody like you, and obviously there's people all over the world when you're involved in the internet here. Do you have a lab, or do you have people go to their own lab and they just send the results to you, or how does that work?
So my main practice is in Scottsdale, Arizona, actually my retreat. And I also, I do travel to a couple other locations. I go to Miami almost every month to go see patients. Once I grow a big enough population somewhere, I just start making other trips. I go to New York, but I do a lot of televisits too. So we can have our first visit. I determine what labs we should draw. And then I work with labs that, is local to the person. And then we have our follow-up via telemedicine as well. And then, depending what we come back with, either they can do their therapy where they are at home, or they can come come to my retreat, stay on premise, and go through a whole mind-body transformation. So it just depends on the scenario.
Okay. I like it. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the chat real quick.
Sure.
I want to see if there was some questions here from the community.
Yeah. When you were you brought up inflammation a couple times. Another thing that I love to work with are stem cells or biologics. I don't know how much you're into that, but that is another, we can talk more in depth if you want about stem cells. I do a very specialized procedure called a V-cell procedure, which is like micro stem cells. But what this does is major anti-inflammatory, rejuvenates your cells, and I like to call them your youth cells. We wake them up.
So I was a millwright for like 30 years, and I moved heavy equipment, heavy machinery. I've got 8 herniated discs in my back. A couple of them are in my neck, and the rest are down my lowers. And is any of that therapy? So they're not. What do you call it? Herniated enough to where they have to do surgery yet. I don't have to be caged yet, but they're telling me that this is my future. Eventually I'm going to have these surgeries. They want to cut my throat open and go in the back and work on my spine. And I didn't know, hell no, I'm not doing that. So I do chiropractic. I've been told to do yoga. I haven't done yoga yet, but try and stay somewhat healthy. But they were doing so Western medicine, or real world medicine, or whatever you want to call it, was doing these injections, and it was some mixture of like prednisone and something else, and they were going right into my spine. They'd say, "Hey, is that your little finger?" And they'd shock my little finger, and I'd feel it, and it was just the weirdest thing ever. And they were in my spine doing this stuff to me, and then okay, we got you, and then they'd give me the shot, and then I'd feel good for the next 6 months or so, but then it would come back, and my arms would go numb, and that kind of thing. What do you do for that? What do you do for like that kind of inflammation or that kind of damage, or how do you work on that without having to do surgery and things?
So I think that's where the next best thing to surgery is where like stem cells come in. Either for directly for your spine, you can inject them into your spine to help bring down some of that inflammation around it. And then if you do start to develop that, like neuropathy or like tingling in your extremities, obviously that's a sign of it worsening. But then there's also different therapies like alpha lipoic acid, things you can do for that, the damage in those cells.
And does your practice do that, or is that something that's you refer to somebody else? Or
so I work with stem cells. I do alpha lipoic acid. I don't do spinal injections, but I can send you to the right place to do it. I love synergy in medicine, and I actually I work with, there's other practitioners around that will partner to do procedures. You mentioned Robert Kiyosaki earlier. And
yes.
I work with well, he had some pretty severe arthritis in his neck, and it was recommended that he get surgery. And so then he came to me and he was like, hell no. What are you going to do for me? And so I interviewed some spine surgeons, and I found one in California who's amazing. And, we partnered I harvested his stem cells, did a whole like laser procedure. He just stuck them directly in his neck. And Robert is at the gym all the time. He reports no pain. He's actually about to get his follow-up MRI because I want to see objective data too. But back to, I don't do spine injections, but I love partnering with other, I feel like this is what's going to create better outcomes for patients, like as doctors, like working together with other ones, and we each do our magic. And it was just a whole beautiful thing that happened with amazing patient outcomes. So it can be done.
Yeah, well, good. I'm going to be inquiring because that's, my biggest issue is my spine, and I want to work on it and figure out, because it's like, okay, well, how do you prevent it after you've already done the damage? Now what do you do? How do you stop it from getting worse? How do you make it a little more comfortable? Because that's, like you said, the neuropathy, it goes into my arms, and they told me eventually I'll lose the feeling in both of my arms. And that's where I'm headed to if I don't, get this under control or do something for it. So,
and one other thing that you could be doing is, I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said, no, I'm going to be talking to you about that.
Okay, definitely. One other thing is Pilates to help strengthen your core muscles to support your spine.
Okay. I'm going to do lots more surfing. I don't know about the Pilates, but I'm going to try to maybe do some more surfing instead of Pilates. My wife's trying to get me to yoga, and I just haven't been able to just pull that off yet. It's like, I don't know. The mat in the room with it's the downward dog. I can do that on my surfboard. So anyway, so let's talk a little bit about, so I know preventative medicine, and especially for younger people out there, starting this thing early and, putting supplements in, like, maybe we can talk about this too. Rango's talking. Thanks for the $5, Rango. He's talking about GCMAF colostrum. That's another one of those awesome, like phytoplankton and acai berry and all of these other things that, I've heard are just, wonder supplements. But maybe we can let's talk about that for a second. These wonder supplements. What are some of your favorite? Do you think they're good? Add them. What's your, because they're expensive. These things are expensive. And that's what I want to talk about, is prices of things and costs and whatnot. But what do you think of these superfoods?
I think as long as you're getting a good quality product, I think a lot of them can be really beneficial. But don't be blinded by, you're talking about acai. There's like acai bowls out on the market. I was talking.
It's like ice cream. It's like Baskin Robbins.
I was like, did you ever look at the sugar? I've seen bowls that have like 75 grams of sugar. I'm like, that's not a superfood. Like,
tastes good as hell, but you might not be getting a whole bunch of benefit from it.
Yeah. So it depends, like, how are you ingesting this stuff? But I think there are some really good supplements. Like, when people ask me, like, what are your biggest supplements that are so important for people? I am a big fan of good quality omega-3s, adrenal supplements, because everybody is stressed. Even if you don't think you're stressed, our tolerance level just like keeps going up.
What's an adrenal supplement?
So they're like a different adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha, rhodiola. And what these do is basically balance our cortisol is what responds to our stress. Yes. It is what balances our, like those fight or flight hormones. And, a lot of people are like this throughout the day. They're spiking and then crashing and spiking. And this leaves them eventually feeling tired all the time. So what these adaptogenic herbs do is help to balance. And they are known as like intelligent herbs because they can actually, or adaptogens, because they actually adapt to your hormones. So if you are